Hello, I'm Father Robert Ard, and I'm here with Dr. Craig McDonald, and he is taking over the book study for this upcoming year from our lovely Wanda May. So we're going to talk about what you're up to this year in the book study, and so I just want to kind of pick your brain, Craig, and find out kind of what is the overarching theme, and then what are some of the books that you're using as touchstones along that maybe major arc of a theme. So I'm going to hand it over to you and maybe tell us about that overarching theme.
Well, I've been interested in this idea of memory and how what we remember, how memory helps us, but also how it can damage us because we remember things and we won't let them go. And so as you and I were talking, I've been interested too in spiritual autobiography, and so that, of course, remembering things and how the remembrance of them is shaped by, our coming to faith, perhaps. So I thought, well, one of the things I'd like to do is to read some books that really deal with memory, both nonfiction and fiction.
One of the things that I've said often, Craig, is that one of the big problems at the Reformation in the Eucharistic theology debates was the paucity of understanding memory and remembrance. All sides kind of had this kind of what I would call a two-dimensional understanding of memory. Either we were redoing something again and again and again, or we were just in our heads remembering what had happened in the past. But I think what you're talking about is that, one, memory has an intellectual component, but it has a deep, embodied, and incarnate reality. And that, three, it's about putting multiple layers of our being together, about putting the community together correctly, about putting the person back together correctly, about reordering us so that we become capable of being the people that God calls us to be, and not just be phantoms thinking thoughts that we had yesterday or the day before.
Yes, exactly right. And one of the things that struck me over the last couple of weeks as you've been preaching on Hebrews is this idea of how our story is part of a much larger story. Yeah. And so one of the things that I was hoping that we could do in the books that I've been looking at is to see that as well, and how memory in the context of community is, particularly a community of faith, such as here at Holy Cross, can bring about healing and reconciliation.
Yeah.
And the book that is going to be sort of framing that is by Miroslav Volf.
Who is if you don't know Miroslav Volf, he is a phenomenal ecclesiologist. And you might say, well, Robert, what is an ecclesiologist? And an ecclesiologist is somebody who studies the body of Christ or the structure of the church, and how the whole body can be put together in such a way to really not only give glory to God, but so that the people in the body might truly become the people that God calls them to be.
Yes, and his story is particularly poignant because he was he's Yugoslavian by birth, and he was called back to Yugoslavia to do national service even though he lived in the United States, and was immediately under suspicion and was interrogated day after day after day. And although that didn't involve physical torment, it was very much psychological torment. So he's trying to come to terms with what it means to forgive his interrogator. Yeah. And how much of that do I remember? How much of it should I need to remember it rightly? How much should I let go of it? And so as a person of faith, he's looking at this as a sort of test case for the way we deal with trauma in our past. So we'll be reading this parallel to the other books that we're reading. We're not going to try and read this all at one time, but he brings up some wonderful. We'll be looking at Dante's Divine Comedy, not all of it, but he references it here. And so we'll be using this as a kind of touchstone throughout at least the first semester maybe.
Well, that's fantastic. I've always enjoyed the books that I've read by Miroslav Volf, and I think that you all will as well, as you go on a journey together if you choose to go on this journey. And so you've brought another book with us, and I think it's actually quite a timely book since the author just died 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah, yes, I just found that out a few moments ago. Lori was telling me about it. This is by Frederick, he calls himself Buechner. He's German, but he had a very traumatic upbringing too, because his father, when he was, I think, about 9 years old, committed suicide. And that becomes a prevailing memory for him. He calls this the sacred journey. Ironically, he was baptized here at Holy Cross, and he and his mom and brother and grandmother lived here for a few years. So back in the 30s, he was baptized, and this is about his journey to faith, and particularly in the light of this traumatic experience.
Now, what did he call the people at Holy Cross again?
He said it was a group of eccentrics.
Well, you know what? Very little changes over even 90 years. So I think many of you should pick up this book and read it, not only because Buechner is a fabulous writer and a great storyteller and essayist, but also because he's part of our own history and the remembrance of our own history. And how cool is that kind of a world-renowned Christian author would be part of our own particular history here at Holy Cross. That's pretty profound.
Yes. So, Reverend Molly's mom was, I think, present at that baptism, or at least she was attending church. So, yeah. So I won't say that she was eccentric. I never knew her. But,
yeah. Well,
but it's called The Sacred Journey, and that's kind of really the theme of what we're looking at in this course.
I'm sure Reverend Molly wouldn't mind if you called her eccentric, though.
I'm not going to touch
Okay,
that.
well, I will touch it. Yes, I think she is an eccentric. So, and I think she'll raise a glass of wine to that. So, cheers to you, one eccentric Reverend Molly. So, what else do you got for us on this journey?
Well, the thing, a kind of underlying theme to this is that literature is a great conversation, and that was certainly true up until about 50 years ago, where you would have authors referring to those that they had admired. And one of the things that Buechner refers to is the Tempest. So we will do this along with Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas, the poem, but he also references the Tempest. So the second month, in October, we will look at the Tempest by Shakespeare. And then we will go to Wendell Berry, who wrote a book called Remembering, which is a fictional story. But in that, he sort of shapes his book according to Dante's Inferno. So the following month, in December, we will be looking at portions of the Divine Comedy.
Yeah.
Because Volf, again, references the Divine Comedy, particularly between the Purgatory and the Paradiso. There's a drinking, Dante the Pilgrim drinks from two rivers. First of all, the river of forgetfulness, and then the river of remembrance.
Yeah.
So you can see these modern authors engaging with these older authors, and it's quite a wonderful chemistry that arises.
You know, you talked about drinking from those two rivers, the river of forgetfulness and the river of remembrance or memory. And I think that's in some ways what we do as Christians. You know, we come to church to remember who we are, right? We come to celebrate the Eucharist and to give thanks to God for us being made in His likeness and image, and to remember that we are made in that likeness and image. And then for the next 6 days, we seem to drink of the river of forgetfulness and forget that we have been made in the likeness and image of God, and that we are called each and every day to remember that Christ has died for us, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again. That deep, profound memory of what God is doing for us.
Yes, and it's interesting too. And again, going back to Volf, he talks about the Exodus, and he talks about the Passion of Christ, and how these have shaped the communities. But as you say this about the Eucharist and about baptism, simultaneously, we are remembering who we are, but we're also being invited to forget our sin,
That's
because
right.
that's been, because God has forgotten our sin.
That's right.
Yeah. At least as the psalmist would say, the sins are removed from us.
That's right. We come to church, and every Sunday we do a general confession of sin, where we hear not only ourselves say those words, but everybody around us, that great cloud of witnesses, both evoking deep, profound memory of what has happened, and also evoking that we might forget and forgive those who have sinned, ourselves mostly.
Right. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's the first semester. Second semester, I'm still speaking in academic terms. Second semester will be we'll be looking at Toni Morrison's Beloved, because there's a wonderful, a very powerful scene of forgiveness and a group from the church coming together and surrounding the main character there. And then Brideshead Revisited.
I love Brideshead Revisited. I think that's powerful. Evelyn Waugh is just such a brilliant author, and so much really interesting stuff on memory and coming to terms with all of the things that have happened, and all the things also that we wished had happened but hadn't. Right.
Yeah.
And so I am so excited, and I'm really looking forward to this. Now, to kind of close this up, Craig, when are you having this class?
Our classes will meet on the second Tuesday of each month. So we'll have our first class reading Buechner and Fernhill on the 8th of September.
All right.
And then thereafter, and it will be at 6:30 for roughly an hour and 15 minutes, depending on how the discussion goes.
All right. Well, this is wonderful, and Craig, I am looking so forward to this class, and I hope that many of you will take time and have the opportunity to come on this journey of remembrance that Craig is going to lead us on. And so, Craig, I thank you for undertaking this, and thank you so much for already putting a lot of time and effort and thoughtfulness into this book study for the upcoming year.
Well, you're most welcome, and I'm looking forward to it a great deal. Thanks for the privilege.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you all.
Yes.